Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Anne Arundel County Council Chambers. We're here today for the Maryland Department of Transportation CTP annual tour. I believe I'm Vice Chair Allison Pickard. We have Councilwoman Shannon Ledbetter from District 7, Councilwoman Lisa Rodvian from District 6, Councilwoman Julie Hummer here from District 4, and in the audience I see Delegate Heather Bagnall. And I don't want to miss any other elected officials that are with us today, but I do believe that is the only sighting I had. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to County Executive Stuart Pittman, who also has Mr. Sam Sneed here, and you guys are going to open the meeting, and then we're going to turn it over to the Maryland Department of Transportation.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I do have a slide presentation, which is unusual for me, so it'll keep me on topic, which is good for you. I won't be too long and not as many slides as it seems, but I want to thank you for being here. I understand this is the last of 24 counties, and you're probably glad about that. We'll, go out to a bar on West Street after this and have a good time. If we're kind enough, and you're kind enough to us, maybe we'll join you. But hopefully, you'll be ending on a high note. And we look forward to this every year. This is really important for the state transportation folks to be here and really get a feel of our county and what we need. And I know many of your staff and you are very familiar with Anne Arundel County. We are the crossroads of Maryland. We've lost that slogan that was under County Executive Lighthizer called us that. We are now the best place for all. And I will say that transportation is the great connector that makes us the best place for all. So let's jump right in and to the next slide. I want to acknowledge that Sam Sneed, our Director of Transportation, is here and also represents us on the Maryland Transportation Authority new appointment. Thank you, Secretary Weedfeld, for that. We love having that representation. But our Move Anne Arundel Transportation Master Plan has this sentence, and I want to read it because I think it's really good. It's well done. Anne Arundel County will provide a safe, efficient, equitable, sustainable, and multimodal transportation system that provides residents, travelers, and visitors with connectivity and choice. And some people ask me why multimodal when everybody drives cars, and it is because cars are not necessarily the safest, most efficient, equitable, or sustainable forms of transportation. So the other ones that we'll talk about are equally important. Going to the next slide, you can't really see it here very well, but we do have the data of where people go to, where they travel to and from in our county. The big red one is inner county, and then the others are all of the surrounding counties. And so lots of movement, both for employment and otherwise, between our neighboring counties, D.C. and the Baltimore area. So we're part of a region, and that is very important to keep in mind as we do our transportation work. So what we did in our CTP letter, the letter that we send to you every year that lays out our priorities, is we divided it into 4 areas: roadways, transit, bicycle and pedestrian, and then some general policy topics. So we will talk briefly about each one of those. Jumping to roadways, and then the next slide on roadways are priorities. These are where we have traffic bottlenecks, where too many cars are trying to get to the same place at the same time. And you'll notice that a lot of them are north-south. So Route 3, Route 2, and 97, which has jumped into the budget, fortunately. Not so much at our request, we had talked about it, but Route 2 and 3 were our top priorities for many years, trying to move traffic through some bottlenecks. Route 97 is part of all that because people jump off of 97 onto 2 and 3. Everybody's looking for a way to get north and south. And so now that there is in the budget this 97 project, that helps as well. I think we can, by adding additional lanes, as well as the Bay Bridge, Central Avenue, 170, and 198. And if you turn to the next slide, it shows for each of these where the money is coming from. And we are very proud that in our first budget, remember, we created this thing called the Permanent Public Improvements Fund. We knew we had capital projects we just couldn't fund. And so we did a 0.1% increase on the income tax, right? Income tax, yes. And that allowed us not only to do schools and public safety infrastructure, but to do transportation infrastructure, and specifically to put money in where many other counties have not, to entice the state, to almost bribe them to actually do the planning and put into their budget the things that are our priorities. And as a result of that, let's go to the next page. These are funded and unfunded, but I want to note that the priorities that we have are now in the state's top 10. So this is sort of extraordinary. We're 1/10 of the state in terms of population. You may not have noticed this, but we're 6 of your top 10 traffic priorities because we're the crossroads and many other good reasons. But one of them is that we're putting money on the table, and we will continue to do that with the expectation that the state responds with even more money. So. And I would note that of these top, Maryland Route 3, North and South, is now the #1 in your priorities based on a scoring system. This isn't anybody's opinion. This is a scoring system priority for the state. Number 3 is Maryland 170. Number 8 is Maryland 214. Number 10 is the Bay Bridge. Number 2 we're going to get to is not on this, Pearl Transit Center, and then number 6 is the Odenton Mark Garage. All good for Anne Arundel County. So the next slide simply says accelerate delivery. We in addition to getting things planned, we want to get things completed, and we will give you all sorts of kudos, just as much for completing projects as we do for the ones that have been underway. As planning them. And we in the county have a program going on right now trying to figure out how to increase the production, the pace of our public improvements in all of our projects. And I'm sure you're doing the same. It's always slower than we would like in government. So let's jump into transit and our county priorities. And I will say that transit has become a bigger priority in our administration over the last 5 years than before. There is the build it and they will come philosophy as opposed to, well, people aren't riding it, so let's not bother to build it. It's expensive and it takes a commitment and it takes an acknowledgement that it is good for people who don't have cars. It's good for the environment. It's good for us in a lot of ways to have more transit rather than less. And COVID didn't help. COVID, obviously, ridership decreased everywhere. But the Parole Transportation Center is the #2 state priority, which is extraordinary. Thank you for that. Love that. We've gotten federal earmarks for it. We've gotten state funds for it. We put in our own capital money. And that'll be a place where we can move more routes out from right here in the middle of the county near Annapolis. And it'll be good for the Westfield Mall as well. Lots funding. It's the formula that you have that goes to transit. And we say every year, and we will continue to say, the formula gives preference to counties that have a lot of transit already, as opposed to doing it by population or giving the money to counties that have plans to expand transit. We would like to get some credit for being in that group that is expanding transit to get more funding. Transit-oriented development has been a way that we have really convinced the public that this county can grow and grow in a way that is greener, smarter, more equitable. And so we have some sites that we've talked about adding to the state's list of TOD designations. Odenton is the only TOD designation, but we all know that we've done studies and looked at what can be done at Laurel, what can be done at BWI, what can be done at the Cromwell Station coming down on the light rail as well. So we're excited about that work. And we develop around the train stations so that we can then increase ridership, so that then you can increase service. We have a transportation ops facility that is about a $30 million project that is in our capital budget, and we're going to be asking for help for that as well, so that as we grow our system, we can maintain those vehicles. And then we have the need for expanded regional services, more RTA, more MTA, as we also add county routes. And on the county transportation investments, let's jump to that. There's the Odenton Mark Garage, which is now #6 on the priority list. We're funding that through our TIF dollars from the Odenton area, but y'all are helping us to get it built, and it's a great partnership. That's something that's been needed for a very long time so that we can remove some of the surface parking and have structured parking to make land available for development, to then increase ridership and really make Odenton Town Center into the town center it was supposed to be. So a lot of people are excited about that, and the community has been very engaged. The Parole Transit Center we've talked about already, our number 2 priority. We have a bus shelter going in at Arundel Mills that'll also improve the experience of riding transit. Transportation ops facility we've talked about, expanded routes. I won't go into all of them, but we have managed to expand routes in recent years, and new call and ride zones. We started call and ride in South County where there's not a lot of population centers and not as much ridership. And now we've moved it up into North County, and the numbers are exploding as people are getting the word that you can call and get a bus pretty much anywhere in the region that you want. And then what I think is the coolest thing of this whole presentation is that little box to the left that shows that we've increased ridership 50%. But I don't know if you can see it, but that red line that drops was COVID that year. And then each of the lines as you go higher is the years since post-COVID. And the green line, 22, was higher than the other lines. And then way up there, the blue line is this year. We're really, really rocking it. And I want to thank Sam Sneed for the innovative work that they've been doing. We started out by painting the buses, making them fare-free, painting them that said free, free, free. So everybody would know. And now we've finally gotten with the 21st century with the cool Passio Go app. I was out there doing a little ad for it recently, and there were 3 people that were waiting for the bus, and they didn't know about the app. You can see where the bus is, and you can see all the routes in the county, and it just makes the whole rider experience great. When we have all electric buses, it's going to be even better, but we're not going to get into that too much right now. So we feel like we're making great progress, and we need your help, of course. Secure adequate funding. Well, that's pretty simple. We want more money from the LOTS formula, and we want it yesterday. We'll talk about that at the end, money. And then bicycle pedestrian. So I was on Fox 45 this morning. About once a month, I get on for about 2 minutes they give me, and pick a topic. And I said, the topic is what we're doing today. And the public, can come join us. And when I talked about bicycle and pedestrian, the guy said, well, there are some people who say that, you have these bike lanes and nobody's using them and it takes up space that the cars could be using. And why are you putting up bike lanes? And I said, well, yeah, during rush hour, there's a lot of car traffic, but, go out on the B&A trail on the weekend, and there's a lot of traffic, and people are making themselves healthy, and if we build it, more people will use it. And have you ever been to Amsterdam? Or go with the mayor when he's going in a couple of weeks. I'm not going to be on that trip, by the way. But the city of Annapolis is really serious about bicycle infrastructure, and they are going to the Netherlands to study it, as well as resilience. So I think we're going to make great progress there. Sidewalks, council members know what it's like when you go to our budget town halls and the sidewalk folks are there fighting for sidewalks. They're adamant about more sidewalks. So we are investing in sidewalks as well as shared use paths, bike and pedestrian. And then there's, of course, the trail network. And I would be in big trouble if I didn't talk about the trail network. So let's go to the next slide. And so the actual trails, and we've got a map coming up where we need to complete the spine, complete the route for Anne Arundel County. But the Broadneck Trail, which is getting there, and the South Shore Trail, which is let's actually jump to the next slide. Now let's jump to the one after that, complete the spine, so that you can actually see. So, and then the South Shore Trail, which goes from western, Odenton, all the way back down into Annapolis. And we have a number of sections that we have to acquire land and complete there. The Broadneck Trail, of course, goes from, it goes out out by the Bay Bridge. And then the WB&A Bridge is going to connect us to Prince George's County, and it's almost done. So it's funded. There have been some bureaucratic nightmares there. And then the BWI extension, so we have the trail that goes all the way around the airport, and then the extension is gonna go up through Brooklyn Park and hopefully be a huge asset both for pedestrians and folks on bikes. And then we have our sidewalks and shared use paths. I think that our public, our residents, are pretty excited and adamant about all of the bike and pedestrian transit is a little harder at this point to get the advocacy for because there aren't as many people riding it. And the people who ride transit often have 2 or 3 jobs and don't have time to come out to meetings and make a case for their needs. But their needs are essential to be able to get places. And we do have these traffic bottlenecks, and those are some of the hardest things to address. I'm really gratified that 6 of the state's top 10 priorities are in Anne Arundel County. Jumping into the next slide with policy, these are, we've talked about our program and how we look at both the PPI fund that we still have going from our tax increase, actually putting real sweat into this game. Our investment policy is driven by Move Anne Arundel. Sam Snead and the Transportation Commission come with proposals every year in our budget, and then we go to you and we ask you to put skin in the game. Vision Zero, we took seriously when we adopted the state's Vision Zero program. And one of the things that we've done is ask for authority from the state to do speed cameras because we know they save lives. And a lot of our neighborhood organizations have come to us and said, we know exactly where we need to slow the traffic down, and we didn't have the authority to do it. So now we do. We got that legislation passed, and we just got our contract to be able to start doing some of those speed cameras. So as you hear from residents in neighborhoods, we're not quite ready to get them onto the street, but we're getting very, very close, and we can save lives with that. And I also want to mention the Resilience Authority, because as we move to electric vehicles and fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and also putting our public infrastructure in places where it's not going to be underwater with storm level and sea level rise and storms, our Resilience Authority is helping us make smart decisions about how to do that, and actually getting a lot of federal money as well, because it is a resilience project. So we look at all that when we're making our investment decisions. But I do want to say that, and I'll close with this, every year when we met with MDOT over the last 5 years that I've been there, I would turn to whoever the secretary of the year was, been a few, and say, what are you doing about revenue? I mean, we all see it declining. We know that vehicles are using less fuel, and we're basing it on a gas tax. I mean, it's insanity. Everybody else in the country's trying to figure out this solution to this, and you went and you cut tolls. So you cut revenue knowing that we had all these projects that you couldn't fund, and where does that leave us? When are you going to do something about it? And they would just kind of stare blankly. And then Governor Moore came in, Secretary Wiedefeld came in, and said, no, we have to solve this problem. We have to solve the revenue problem. And I fully acknowledge that, this proposal isn't what we'd like it to be. In fact, it's not even balanced, right? Because you know that you can't say no to all the projects, but we've been left with, depending on federal money, and the state budget in a lot of departments is in some pretty terrible shape, and some really tough decisions, some fiscally responsible decisions have to get made. So I want to thank you for putting together the commission that is actually looking at how to raise revenue, what the options are, and we as a state are going to have to make some tough decisions as long as we want to stay connected and move these projects forward. So I will end with that, and thank you for taking on, all of you, a very difficult job, your whole team, Secretary Wiedefeld. It's a difficult time. But if we fail, and if we just throw all this stuff in the drawer that waits for the next decade or two, our kids are going to look back and say, why didn't you do transportation? That's what we need. So thank you for doing it.
Okay, good afternoon again. Secretary Paul Wiedefeld, I'm going to turn over the table to you and your team. I'm going to let you introduce your own folks, and the chamber is yours. As the folks come up, there will be an opportunity at the close of the Secretary's presentation for questions, but for now, the chambers belongs to the Secretary, so welcome.
Music stopped there. Very good. Good afternoon. Again, Paul Wiedefeld, Secretary of Transportation for the record. I want to thank the county executive for his comments and Sam Steed, who is actually on our toll authority board now. And I welcome him and the time and the commitment that he's providing for us. With me today are members of the team at MDOT, Will Pines, the Administrator for State Highway Administration, Melissa Williams from the Toll Authority. There she is. Holly Arnold from the Maryland Transit Administration, Chrissy Nizer, who I think you know from the Motor Vehicle Administration, Ricky Smith from Maryland Aviation, and Bob Monroe, who's the Deputy Executive Director at the Port Administration, as well as with us today. So if you'll be patient with us just a little bit, I'll give a big overview of the department, have the different agencies give an update, and then obviously take any questions or comments. First and foremost, I wanted to thank, I did meet with a number of representatives from the county at MACO. It's a great opportunity to understand some of the issues that you're facing. Since our meeting, our team has met with about the Cromwell Station and discussed opportunities to include the county's redevelopment efforts around the station and broader TOD at that station. We'll continue to work very closely with the county on that. In terms of the department, at the highest level, our priorities are to work in partnership and transparency in everything that we do, and to deliver facilities and services that support the governor's goals of social equity, environmental protection, and sustainable communities. Most importantly, MDOT will build and maintain a transportation network that provides not only physical mobility, but economic mobility to lift all Marylanders and all communities. We made some progress, but we had a long way to go, for sure. From an operational perspective, we have three major goals. The first being safety of our employees, safety of our contractors, safety of anyone who uses our system, either our facilities or our services. As was mentioned, we are committed to Vision Zero to reach that by 2030. To that end, I have directed each of the modes to take a hard look at some of their policies, some of their regulations, some of their designs to see if there's anything else we can be doing to make more safe to use the system. Another initiative that we are undertaking is the review of the Complete Streets program that we have at the department. It hasn't been, it's 11 years old. And times have changed, and I think it's very important that we take a hard look at that, because that is, in last year, roughly a third of all the fatalities on this system were bicyclists and pedestrians. And this is what deals with that issue, to try to make that safer for them. So we have that underway. Our second priority is to preserve the multi-billion-dollar transportation investment that citizens of Maryland have made in all the modes that you see in front of you today, and to make sure that we don't slide backwards and deal with issues that we know we're going to have to deal with, and probably at a higher expense later in time. And then third is where dollars are available to reinvest them into expanding the system to meet both social goals and economic goals and goals of the community. So we'll continue to do that. But as we do that, we're looking at the economic access must extend beyond just a single occupancy drivers only. We must look at every project as a multimodal opportunity, as was just spoken by the county executive, to benefit pedestrians, bicyclists, and make every connection we can to promote transit and ride sharing. For example, we started discussions to expand the MARC system into Delaware and Virginia. Excuse me. We're also working with other state agencies, local jurisdictions, and private sector to create inclusive economic opportunities by leveraging underutilized transit stations and turning them into unique community-focused TODs. We partnered with Medco to issue 2 requests for proposals to study TOD opportunities. One study will examine opportunities along the MARC Penn line, and the second will look at innovative ideas to support investments around light rail and the metro in Baltimore, and serving in Arundel County as well. Another priority for us that isn't sort of those core 3 priorities I think that most transport agencies would have is climate change, and how do we build a system that's resilient to what we're all facing, particularly in communities like Arundel County with vulnerable coastal communities that we have here. So that includes looking at electrification of the transit fleet, for instance, and promoting and implementing decarbonization strategies throughout our entire capital and operating program. To create, maintain, and continue to build this transportation network of the future will obviously cost a bit of dollars, is the reality. Our transportation, as you know, system competes both regionally, nationally and globally. So we need to invest in it to do that. And frankly, our investment levels have not been, they do not meet the needs that we have, as was mentioned by the county executive, for a number of reasons. One is clearly the overall cost of doing business post-COVID, whether it's labor, whether it's materials, and just the physical cost of doing anything right now, as you know, is up, and the high inflation rate driving that. So that's one that I think we share with the county as well. We have another unique one, which is we were the benefits of COVID dollars, particularly for transit, to the tune of almost $3 billion over a 3-year period, almost 4-year period. And those dollars dry up this year. So that's another challenge we face. The other one is, and this was also mentioned by the county executive, is a major source of the trust fund is the motor fuel tax. Almost 25% of our money comes from that. And as cars become more efficient, which is fantastic for consumers and us all, but from a financial model perspective, it does not help us. And the same with the electrification of the fleet. Because they're not buying into the quote user fees. So again, it's another fantastic opportunity for the climate and other things, but from a financial perspective, impacts the trust fund. Another major source of our funding is titling tax, and that also is under stress. Cars are being built to last longer. Again, fantastic for consumers, but from a financial perspective, is an issue that we have to deal with. Fortunately, we've had the federal government with a number of dollars coming in for the IIJA money, the federal dollars. That generally comes to us in 2 ways. It comes through formula grants, where basically we get formulas like everyone else across the country, and they're usually around 80 federal, 20% local match. So we will continue to do that. The other pot of money is discretionary dollars, where we compete against other states and other projects, and they generally work out to be about a 50-50 split, 50 federal, 50 state. And obviously, the more money you put in, the better your competition, the more likely you are to win. So that's a challenge for us. If we don't have the dollars to pull down or to compete well, is the challenge there. All this has really come home, as you see in the draft CTP that we've presented today. It's roughly a $21 billion program. But as the county executive mentioned, we have a hole in the program of over $2 billion. It starts in 25 and grows in the out years. The reality is, one avenue we could have taken is we could have come in here and cut $2 billion worth of projects. We took a little different approach, and I think it's really inconsistent with trying to reach out in terms of partnership and being transparent about what we're up against. These are big issues for us as a state to deal with all the issues we have in the transportation arena. So I think we need to have a much broader discussion with a whole range of stakeholders of how we're going to deal with that issue, again, as the county executive mentioned. To that end, the legislature did set up the Maryland Commission of Transportation Revenue and Infrastructure Needs. They started their work in August. They have a draft report due to the legislature and the governor in January and a final by next year. And they're wrestling with the exact issues I've just raised, some of these core structural issues that we have to deal with to move the agency forward, move the department forward. So with that, I'll stop at the MDOT-wide level and get into some of the modes. Let's start with Will Pines from Highway Administration. Will?
Well, thank you, Paul, and good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Will Pines, and it's great to be here with you this year, this time leading the State Highway Administration. In just a few months into this role, I'm really excited about the leadership opportunity that I have at State Highway. Under my leadership, SHA will continue to advance infrastructure projects that will connect Marylanders to jobs and economic opportunities. Building and maintaining a multimodal transportation system for all users that is safe, equitable, and balanced, that's our goal. That means we're going to reimagine how our highway network supports the needs of communities, and we'll be putting a greater focus on safety statewide. Because we believe that one lost life is one too many, we'll be honing in on asset, work zone, and vulnerable user safety. This past spring, SHA released Maryland's first Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, or what we refer to as the PSAP plan. And that is a new data-driven tool that will enhance pedestrian and bicycle safety for communities across the state. We're making significant investments to deliver the PSAP projects, working with our new active transportation team within SHA and our local district offices. We're also taking a fresh look at organizational efficiency. I've asked the SHA team to focus on project delivery, permit approvals, and procurement timelines to look at opportunities to streamline the processes while maintaining ethics and doing good business. We will focus both on delivering SHA projects faster and conducting timely reviews and support for county and developer projects and permits. We realize that there are challenges ahead, but that doesn't mean that our goals have changed. We will continue to improve safety, accessibility, mobility, and a state of good repair. We have to be poised to leverage every available federal dollar. That is really necessary so that we can deliver as much as we can. And this includes pursuing multiple federal grant opportunities. We'll also continue to work with you and delivering local projects. Partnership with our local governments and the community is the key to our mutual successes. I would now like to highlight a few of SHA's projects and accomplishments over the past year. Starting off with great news, which echoes some of the comments that the county executive made. In September, Governor Moore announced more than $25 million in grants for 40 bicycle, pedestrian, and trail projects across Maryland, including 2 Transportation Alternative Program grants here in Anne Arundel County. $6.4 million of that was to extend the BWI Loop Trail, which is 1.2 miles, and $240,000 for Phase 2 of the Safe Routes to Schools accessibility study. Additionally, 2 Kim Lampier grants were also awarded for projects within the county. That included $340,000 to buy and install protected bicycle lane delineators and $224,000 to help design Bay Ridge Avenue bicycle facilities in Annapolis. As part of kind of moving on to some of our projects, other projects, as part of the Maryland 175 Annapolis Road and Maryland 295 Interchange Improvements Project, Maryland 175 will be expanded from 2 to 6 lanes from Selner Road to McCarrion Court. The $77 million project also includes bicycle and pedestrian accommodations and signalized left turns at Maryland 175. Our staff is working with our contractor and other agencies currently on utility coordination. Additionally, preliminary design is underway on your top transportation priority to enhance safety, accessibility, and operations on Maryland 3 from St. Stephen's Church Road to the Maryland 32 interchange at Interstate 97. It's including a 3rd lane in each direction, a shared use path, and improved sidewalks and crosswalks. We appreciate the county's continued funding support, as the county executive mentioned, which is helping to advance this project. We're working towards 30% design, and we'll work toward public involvement in the spring of 2024. We also appreciate meeting with Crofton residents in July to discuss this and other developer projects that are improving key intersections. Design is also underway to improve the northbound Maryland 2 from US 50 to Arnold Road. The addition of a 3rd lane and a sidewalk from Chautauqua Road. Well, that's a Chautauqua. Thanks for the correction there, Ricky. Needed to phone a friend on that one. It even had the pronunciation here. To Arnold and along Arnold Road from B and A Trail to Maryland 2 will improve safety for vulnerable users and traffic operations. Thank you again to the county for your continued funding support again for this project. We anticipate reaching 30% design in January of 2024. This summer, we also conducted the US 50 pilot project to ease congestion on local roads and improve traffic flow along US 50 in the Broadneck Peninsula area. Before kicking off the pilot, SHA prioritized public engagement to determine potential solutions. During the pilot, we closed entrance ramps at exit 30 and exit 32 from 10 a.m. on Thursdays to 6 p.m. on Sundays, as well as permanently closing exit 30 at Whitehall Road. Feedback from the Broadneck Peninsula residents has been generally positive, aligning with the objectives outlined in our master plan. We're working on completing the full analysis, which we'll be using along with community feedback to determine future steps, such as possibly keeping exit 30 open and not closing ramps on Thursday to lessen the impacts to Northrop Grumman. Finally, I want to take a moment to thank our district engineer, Kim Tran, for the efforts that she and her team provide to the county with support on projects and constituent services, She's here today. She'll be joining me up here at some point, and they do a really great job. So with that, I want to thank you for your time, wish you an early happy Thanksgiving, and I'll now turn it over to my colleague at the MDTA, Melissa Williams.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Melissa Williams. I'm the Director of Planning and Program Development at the MDTA. Financed by toll revenue, MDTA is the independent state agency that finances, owns, operates, preserves, and secures Maryland's 8 toll facilities. We're investing those toll dollars right back into our world-class infrastructure for all of Maryland. MDTA's commitment to maintaining Maryland's toll roads and bridges is paramount, as well as doing our part to watch over the thousands of people traveling those roads every day. I'd like to talk about a project that keeps the people of Anne Arundel County connected. For many here today, crossing the Bay Bridge plays a big part in their lives. The $28 million Chesapeake Bay Crossing Study Tier 2 NEPA is funded by MDTA's toll revenue. The Tier 2 study is analyzing alternatives for providing adequate capacity and access to improve travel reliability, mobility, and safety across the Bay and along the US 5301 corridor. Our public engagement objective is to establish a fair, equitable study process that leads to equitable project outcomes. The federally required Tier 2 NEPA study is focusing on the selected corridor alternative, which is Corridor 7, that was identified through the Tier 1 study. Corridor 7 is 2 miles wide and runs 22 miles from the Severn River Bridge in Anne Arundel County to the US 5301 split in Queen Anne's County. This corridor includes the site of the existing Bay Bridge. We've heard that the citizens of Maryland are frustrated with congestion at the Bay Bridge and want relief from traffic jams that occur year-round. To address their concerns, we plan to share alternatives with the public in 2024, followed by MDTA's recommended preferred alternative in 2025, and conclusion of the Tier 2 NEPA study in the winter of 2026-2027. If you would like additional details about the study, you can look at the website, which is baycrossingstudy.com. When you think of the Maryland Transportation Authority, you may think our responsibility ends once the bridge is crossed or the light at the end of the tunnel becomes visible. Our customers' toll dollars support so much more. The Maryland Transportation Authority keeps our customers connected to life's opportunities. We will continue to be an agency dedicated to innovative transportation solutions that enhance safety, promote equity, and support economic development. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'd like to turn it over to Holly Arnold, the administrator of MTA.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon. My name is Holly Arnold, and I'm the administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration. And I do appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share a little bit about what MTA is doing to support frequent, reliable, and easy-to-use transit throughout Maryland. Public transit is essential to ensuring economic and social mobility, addressing the climate crisis and needed reductions in carbon emissions, as well as reducing congestion and promoting safer and healthier streets for our entire region. Maryland's investments in new transit infrastructure and maintaining our systems in a state of good repair will make a difference in people's lives throughout the state. We're in the process of undertaking a major bus electrification effort at MTA, with the first electric buses on site and being tested before entering revenue service later this year. On the commuter rail side, we're focused on MARC service expansion, which includes closing the MARC SEPTA gap and adding run-through service into Virginia. We're also partnering with Amtrak to replace the BMP tunnel with the new Frederick Douglass tunnel, including committing to transitioning to fully electric operations on the Penn line, which will reduce emissions and speed up travel time. We're currently updating the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan, which will be taking place over the next year and outline a vision for MARC service along with major investments. We released a survey last month, and I encourage everyone to share their thoughts and share with your constituents. We invest over $1 billion annually in transit in the Baltimore region because transit is key to a thriving community. We're focused on operational improvements and capital investments in our bus system that increase service reliability and contribute to a better rider experience. On the rail side, we're nearing completion on a midlife overhaul of our 52-vehicle light rail fleet, and we're actually beginning the process to replace those aging light rail vehicles with modern, accessible vehicles. We're underway with a complete replacement of our metro vehicles and train control system, and just last month, our first set of test rail cars arrived on site. We've significantly stepped up our efforts to hire, train, and onboard new employees while increasing wages and ensuring competitive pay to improve the reliability of our service. In addition to the MTA investments, locally operated transit systems are critical partners in providing transit throughout the state. And MTA makes a significant investment in transit for Anne Arundel County, including the city of Annapolis, by providing more than $3.7 million in operating and capital grants to support those local transit operations. Recently, we've undertaken a comprehensive review of the LOTS operating formula allocation, and I'm pleased to report that beginning next July, funding will be adjusted so that the allocation distributions are more equitable and responsive to changes in local jurisdictions' investment in transit service. Our Office of Local Transit Support team will be working with staff from Anne Arundel County over the next several months as we roll out this formula. So thank you again for the opportunity to speak today, and I would now like to turn it over to Chrissy from Motor Vehicle Administration.
Thank you, Holly, and it's a pleasure to be with you again this afternoon. Customer service has always been a cornerstone of what we do at MVA, but due to a major IT modernization as well as some process changes, we've really been able to deliver on that premier customer service promise. Gone are the days where you need to bring a book or lunch with you to the MVA branch offices. In fact, nearby Annapolis had a 5-minute wait time last year, and the Glen Burnie office, which remains our busiest office statewide, was 9 minutes average. Appointments are available within 1 day, and you can get it the same day as well within 1 hour just to leave some travel time. We're already planning for the next decade, and part of that includes what do our branches look like. One of the things we've implemented is kind of a one-stop shop approach to state and federal government programs. Glen Burnie is a perfect example of that. You have an Easy Pass customer service center located right there. You can also do a TSA pre-check or a TWIC card, which enables you port access at the Glen Burnie location. And we also have a Veterans Affairs office, and that's been able to give veterans and their families more than 28,000 access to service and benefits since it opened in 2019. Annapolis is similar, where we have a Department of Natural Resources partnership, as well as the Easy Pass Customer Service Center and TSA pre-check services, as well as our newly initiated birth certificate services. If you need to get your driver's license or ID card, you can also get a birth certificate there. So we've already done 230 birth certificates. Those would have been customers that were turned away in the past, but instead got to get both documents in one visit. One thing I know that's been important to the county is ensuring we have enough CDL holders. There's a recent change to law thanks to the support of our legislature, one that gives new holders additional time, so 12 months for that learner's permit as opposed to 6. You know, the new federal requirements take longer, and so we want to make sure people are successful in the process. The other part of that allows our existing CDL holders to renew using their DOT physical card, which covers their vision. So keep safety standards, but gives more flexibility both for new drivers, hopefully to get more into the system, and our existing drivers. Another thing that we've announced recently is expanding our languages for our driver license test and our manual. We'll have 17 different languages, including American Sign Language, which has already been deployed. And that'll all be based on plain language, which is more accessibility for those who have language or developmental disabilities, but frankly, just more accessible for all Marylanders. But we know accessibility doesn't end at a branch office. It's important to have access to online services and alternative services. We're proud to say last year, 75% of transactions were completed outside of that traditional branch office experience. Now to talk about safety a little bit, we remain committed, as the Secretary said, to really look at innovative solutions and how we can reach that statewide goal of 0 fatalities. Last year, 48 people lost their lives in Anne Arundel County. So far this year, we're at 37. Unfortunately, statewide, the numbers are just not good. We're closing in on 600, it looks like, if we project to the end of the year. We have not been there since 2007. Obviously, I'm talking about numbers, but we all know those are people and family members and communities. When we look at the data, it really shows the same causes. So, County Executive talked about speed, certainly an issue. Also, impairments, another main cause of crashes. Lack of buckling up. We just put a release out saying that the seatbelt usage rate has gone down. And distraction, clearly we see that on the roadways. So these are all things that each of us can do. So we're putting a call to action. We appreciate your support there. I do want to thank Anne Arundel County. Your Vision Zero plan is a great example of a plan where you bring partners together at the local level and really develop a meaningful plan that then you take and create action from. That's really what we're asking all local jurisdictions to do. So we look forward to continuing to work with you on that. In closing, I just want to take a moment to thank all of our great MBA employees. Many of the wonderful things talked about, the new initiatives, they're all employee-driven ideas, and so the credit really goes to them. So thank you for your time, and now I'll turn it over to Ricky to talk about the great things happening at MAA.
Thank you, Chrissy.
and good afternoon. The Maryland aviation system plays a critical role in supporting travel, tourism, and economic development throughout the state and the region. Governor Moore has spoken about the great assets we have in the state of Maryland that will ensure a dynamic, growing economy for the long term. These important assets include, of course, our public use airports across the state that generate jobs and connect residents and businesses to the global economy. One of those important assets is BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, which serves as a major transportation resource for the state with an economic impact of over $9 billion annually. Even as BWI Marshall serves as a vital economic engine that supports tourism and business development, we recognize and take very seriously our role as a good neighbor. In 2017, we actively worked with local residents and elected officials to create the DC Metroplex Community Roundtable, which has worked with the FAA to make important modifications to airline flight procedures near BWI Marshall Airport. Thanks to the good work of the Roundtable, the FAA is working to revise the flight procedures that should address many community concerns related to aircraft noise. The Roundtable is to be applauded for its commitment and important work on this issue. The FAA intends to begin implementation of the new local air traffic procedures next year. They're looking at May of next year for departures and July for arrivals. We are discussing options with the FAA for engaging the public prior to those changes being implemented. I would also like to briefly mention a new state law that recently increased the size of the Maryland Aviation Commission by 4 members, including 2 specifically from Anne Arundel County. The Maryland Aviation Administration looks forward to working with the new commission members, and we welcome their valuable insight. In terms of passenger traffic, BWI Marshall is currently at about 90% to full recovery following the pandemic. Here in the fourth quarter, airline seat capacity is up 17% from last year, and more significantly, 3% higher than the same period in 2019 prior to the pandemic. We continue to welcome new airline partners and growing international and domestic air service. We're committed to working every day to make our facilities the most efficient, user-friendly airports for our customers. The Maryland Aviation Administration's capital program continues at historic high levels with a 6-year program of over $1 billion. We forecast over $300 million in capital spending for this year, with further growth in fiscal year 2025 to reach about $350 million. It's notable that we are successfully leveraging federal dollars to support our capital needs. Thanks to our federal delegation, we have over $280 million in anticipated federal funds programmed in the draft CTP. Throughout our capital program, we're advancing important projects that will enhance BWI Marshall for our customers, passengers, and provide important facilities for our partners. These critical improvements will shape BWI Marshall for decades to come. So the MA continues to support the 34 public use airports that serve communities across the state. The statewide aviation grants program supports safety projects focused on runway, taxiway, and apron needs. Thanks to MDOT Secretary Paul Wiedefeld, MA intends to administer $2.8 million in funding during fiscal year 2024 for regional airports across Maryland. This includes $23,000 in funding for Tipton Airport to support enhancements to the airport's access control system. With that, thank you again for the opportunity to present, and I will turn it back over. I'll now turn it over to Bob with the Maryland Port Administration.
Thank you, Ricky. My name is Bob Monroe. I am the Deputy Executive Director for Administration and Environment at the Maryland Port Administration, but more importantly, on a personal note, I am a proud resident of Severna Park, where I have lived since 1995 and have raised successfully 3 children. So I do want to start off my comments by personally thanking all the council members as well as County Executive Pittman for your public service and your dedication to maintaining and improving the quality of life for the citizens in this wonderful county. I've been a major benefactor of that, and thank you. During the MACO conference in August, Governor Moore talked, and I quote, about Maryland being the headquarters of the 21st century, with business ready to dominate and a labor force ready to drive growth with resources like the Port of Baltimore, end quote. We at MPA are proud to be part of the governor's economic charge, and I believe we are well positioned and ready to continue to increase waterborne commerce through our ports in Maryland. The port has rebounded strongly from the devastating supply chain impacts of the pandemic that crippled the international maritime shipping industry. In fiscal year 2023, we set a record by handling 11.6 tons of general cargo, and this year we are currently on record to be up 28% on our roll-on, roll-off cargo and 9% with our containers. In addition, the Maryland Port Administration runs Cruise Maryland, and as many of you may be aware, the cruise industry completely shut down during the pandemic. I'm proud to report that now all cruise ships that leave from the Port of Baltimore are sailing at full passenger capacity. We just welcomed back Norwegian Cruise Line for fall and winter schedule, and we are happy to have Royal Caribbean and Carnival Cruise offering year-round cruising. So, if you want to go to the Bahamas, Bermuda, Caribbean, New England, or Canada, you can leave from the Port of Baltimore. To ensure that all these wonderful things continue, we have to maintain our system of operations, and to do that, our system preservation has targeted about $151 million for fiscal year 2024. These preservation dollars go into maintaining our state-owned public marine terminals, which includes cargo warehouses, berths, and roadways. In addition, and very importantly for this county, it also includes the infrastructure supporting our dredge material containment facilities. I would be remiss if I also didn't mention the strong partnership that we have with Ports of America Chesapeake that contributes to the system preservation at our Seagirt container terminal. They have recently and continue to invest more than $530 million into equipment, technology, and efficiencies into and out of the Seagirt Marine Terminal. Not exactly system preservation, but certainly system enhancement. I would like to mention that the CSX Howard Street Tunnel project is currently underway. This will give us the ability to handle double stack trains in and out of the Port of Baltimore, game changer for the Port of Baltimore. We anticipate that double stack will grow our business by about 160 containers annually and will generate somewhere in the vicinity of 13,000 to 15,000 new jobs. The current CSX schedule for these projects have it being completed in 2027. Returning back to system preservation and this county's role in what is basically our dredge material management program. Placing dredge material that comes from the maintenance of our federal shipping channels serving the Port of Baltimore is a critical part of our system preservation. And along those lines, I'd like to highlight MPA's Cox Creek Dredge Management Containment Facility, which is located right here in Anne Arundel County, just south of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. The facility is 237 acres and has received over 4.5 million cubic yards of dredge material since it was activated. What does that mean? 4.5 million cubic yards is probably enough to fill Raven Stadium twice over. Adjacent to the Maryland Port Administration's Cox Creek DMCF is a 126-acre wetland area that has been preserved by MPA by entering into a conservation easement, which is jointly held by the Maryland Environmental Trust and the Scenic Lands River Trust. Cox Creek also, and as do all of our dredge material facilities, has a Citizens Oversight Committee that provides important feedback and support for our dredge material management program. At the recommendation of this Citizens Committee, MPA is developing a 2-mile Swan Creek nature trail loop through the conservation easement that will provide recreational access and better connect the adjacent communities to green space. This trail will include boardwalks, a bridge, outdoor educational classrooms, as well as directional and interpretive signage. In December of 2022, MPA also purchased property adjacent to Cox Creek DMCF. The plans for this property are to utilize it for the innovative reuse of dredge material. We believe that repurposing and recycling dredge material is the long-term future for our dredge material management program, and we're proud that that hub will be here in Anne Arundel County. In closing, I'd like to mention that while the Port of Baltimore is branded as the Port of Baltimore, it is Maryland's port. right here in Anne Arundel County. Companies like Ray Brothers, Delcy Paris, and Capital Forest Products all ship their products through the Port of Baltimore. Thank you for the opportunity to brief you on the Port of Baltimore, and now I will turn it back to Secretary Wiedefeld.
Thank you, Bob. That concludes our presentation. Thank you for your patience. But as you can see, there's a lot going on in the department, obviously from a statewide perspective, but also from an Anne Arundel County perspective. So we'd be glad to take any questions or comments you may have.
Fantastic. I will give first dibs on questions to my council colleagues. If anybody had any questions, I believe we're going to have members of the public come up to the podium. Is that what we're doing? So if the council doesn't have any questions at this time, if there is anybody who is here for questions, I know Mr. Corin wants to ask a question. Why don't you go ahead and be first? And maybe others can come and follow in these seats next to the podium, and we'll just go through and let you introduce yourselves.
Thank you. I think we keep the tradition alive by me being perhaps the only citizen to speak at this annually. So I want to start with a big thank you, both to MDOT and to folks here from Anne Arundel County who have fully embraced multimodal transportation as the best way to reduce traffic, protect our environment, and provide affordable and equitable ways to get around. But we have a lot more to do. I'll start with, I was deeply involved in the development of the Move Anne Arundel plan a few years ago, and we very much looked at the MDOT Strategic Transportation Plan and modeled our plan after it. But we went one step further, and I want to encourage you to consider taking this step, since you now have the draft Maryland plan out for comment, as well as the bike walk plan out for comment. We actually established quantified mode share goals for the county. So you have a chart in there that talks about how many people travel around in single occupancy vehicles versus walking, biking, transit, and that we're behind the rest of the country. But I would encourage you to set quantified goals for changing that shift in mode. We've done that here in the county. We have goals countywide, and we have more aggressive goals in our town centers where there's greater density, access to transit, shorter trips, et cetera. So there's one suggestion, if I may. And then, having established those goals, then align the budgets and the policies to help achieve those goals. So again, I heard a ton of, I started counting how many times did I hear multimodal and bike ped, and I ran out of fingers very, very early in the presentation. But I think we can do more in terms of measuring and applying resource. Safety, Chrissy, thank you. And you mentioned the tragic increase in vulnerable road users being killed on our roads here in Maryland and nationwide. We really need to double down. And I can tell you, we as advocates are very much your partners in doing it. We know some of it is behavioral, but a lot of it is infrastructure design. So we need infrastructure that favors safety over expedience. When I read a report that says speed was not a factor, that is never true. Speed is always a factor, both in the likelihood and the severity of a crash. Finally, I'd like to suggest three things as a way to achieve all of these goals. I'll call them mode shift, road shift, and load shift. And I'm testing this out here. I haven't used this. There's a focus group. So mode shift, again, to relieve traffic, protect the environment, equitable, affordable mobility. Again, let's do the shift in mode. Let's really double down on that. Road shift, I think the answer to traffic on routes 2 and 3, which are inartfully called Crane Highway and Ritchie Highway, they're no longer highways, they maybe once were, is to get through traffic onto the controlled access roads, to get the through traffic onto 100, 97, 50 so that the through traffic never comes onto those roads that are loaded with traffic lights, shopping centers, driveways, et cetera. So I'll call that one road shift. And finally, load shift. Let's shift the times when people drive. I get a discounted rate on my electricity when I charge my EV at night from BG&E. Let's shift the times that people travel on our toll roads, especially Chesapeake Bay Bridge, by considering variable tolls that would encourage more people to go at night. There's plenty of capacity on the bridge. It's just that everyone's going at the same time. If we can spread them out some, that's a near-term solution, and a long-term solution is certainly a replacement span, which we hope will have a separated bicycle and pedestrian lane like nearly every other major bridge that's been built recently across the country. Finally, I'll just mention that, again, here, the collaboration is great. We've had a lot of engagement with your staff about legislative agenda. Here I'm representing a coalition of advocates from across the state under Bike Maryland. But I think you know about the proposed legislation for an Office of Trails for Maryland that would unite all of the local trail networks, like the one that County Exec Pittman showed you, and others across Maryland, would help us get more money into the state for trail building. Bikes on sidewalks, it's permitted here in Anne Arundel, in Howard County, in Montgomery County. We want to flip the default statewide and allow them unless prohibited. That bill is already pre-filed. We hope you'll support that. In 2018, there was a complete streets bill that passed, and it embraced every modal agency represented here at the table, save one. Maryland Transportation Authority was X'd out of that. We're not looking for bike lanes on toll roads or through tunnels, but we do want a policy that says MDTA will include bicycle and pedestrian facilities where appropriate, like on new bridges, like crossings over interstates, because interstates are often walls to people trying to walk and bike for mobility. So we're working on a bill that would establish policy for MDTA to sort of do complete streets in a way that's adapted to their unique mission. SHA maintenance of sidewalks and side paths in their right-of-way, there's a prohibition on that now. The locals have to do it. A lot of the locals cannot afford to do it. We'd like to at least lift the prohibition and allow for the possibility of SHA maintaining sidewalks and side paths that are in the right-of-way, that are outside of the curbs. And finally, I'll end here with stop is yield. 11 states and DC have adopted this. This allows a bicyclist approaching a stop sign to treat the stop sign as a yield sign. It doesn't mean blow through. It means approach slowly, look both ways. If there is no oncoming traffic, then roll through, which gets a cyclist across the intersection or across a trail crossing quicker, straighter, and more visible to drivers, because as a moving object, that cyclist is more visible to approaching drivers than a stationary cyclist. So that one also. Again, we hope, MDOT has a varied history over the years of sometimes being on the sideline on legislative initiatives and sometimes on board. We hope under this administration, we'd like to be down there with you testifying side by side. So I'll leave it there. I'm sure I've exceeded whatever time I was supposed to have taken. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We did not give a time limit, but we might need to now. I'm actually teasing. You're next, sir. You might want to introduce yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, council members of the council, secretary, and your staff. My name is Brad Stevens. I'm a District 1 resident, citizen, and District 32 state representative resident. I've lived here for 50 years, and I'm coming to you because I'm a little concerned of some activities that have been going on in District 1, District 32. The county put a project together. It's called a BWI Trail Spur, and through there, it was informed to the residents who came to those public meetings that the state of Maryland was responsible for Interstate 695 and Maryland 170 interchange. The county would not provide any details. They said they didn't have any. As a resident, that left me concerned because I live in Linthicum and that's going to affect my life. The second thing is, as a taxpayer as well, I hear, hey, we need more funding. Well, that's coming out of my pocket. So I'm a little concerned about, hey, we need more money. So it's coming to me when you say I need more money. And the other thing is, how long is it going to take to implement maglev? Because that's been a lot of money and a long time coming. And it's coming under District 1 and District 32. And it's going to affect our lives because it's going to be tunnels from the city to the airport. And we're seeing the impacts environmentally of the work that's going on. And I know I went to a couple of the public meetings with the contractor who said, oh, by the way, yeah, we're going to put this maglev, it's going to go from Baltimore to DC. But we also talked about the putting all that money into the MARC train and the CSX. Well, we've got two sets of trains going between that Baltimore and DC. And the contractor told me they're not going to make any money on maglev unless it goes from Boston to DC. And so that's all I wanted to share, is that I'd like to know more info and details on maglev and what's going on at the Interstate 695 and Maryland 178 in District 1. Thank you.
In the audience that wanted to have a question or a comment? Okay, well.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Go ahead.
It's kind of, thank y'all very much. A lot going on, and a lot of the projects you mentioned are in my district or pass through my district, including the new Odenton MARC station, parking garage, Route 3, Route 175 at some of the bike trails, so it's good to hear those. But I also want to give a particular shout out. I have a number of kids over the past year have been entering into the driving phase, so I have visited the MVA many times, and yes, I can attest that the wait times are very short. I've been pleasantly surprised every time. It is not living up to the bad hype that we've always heard, so good job.
Ms. Rodvian.
Thank you. I also just want to say thank you for all of the projects that you are investing in, and especially those in our county and Annapolis, which is the district I represent, and the areas outside. I have a question, actually, not so much about anything in Anne Arundel County, but a project that I think impacts Anne Arundel County, because we're interconnected with all of our neighbors, and our success depends on their success. Can you make any comments about the Red Line project in the city of Baltimore?
Sure. Hi. Absolutely. So we are, and I love your point that it is interconnected, right? We're making improvements to the network in Baltimore that will have an impact across our entire network, which includes service that we have into Annapolis and our light rail line. So we're moving full steam ahead on the project. We have resurrected it, the governor back in June. And so we're now on our second round of public meetings. So the first was kind of basically just reintroducing the project, letting folks know that it was here. The second round that we just finished last week was basically regarding the kind of technical analysis, the measures of effectiveness. So we have 6 different alternatives that we're looking at. It's essentially 3 alignments, each one a light rail or a bus rapid transit, and then sharing kind of the trade-offs associated with each of those. So ridership, cost, access, and getting feedback from folks on that. So the goal and the next step is to kind of take all that information and feedback, as well as additional technical analysis, put that together into what we're calling a state recommended alternative that we can announce somewhat early in 2024 and take that into the environmental process, the NEPA process.
Thank you. That was great.
I don't see any more questions. I do want to recognize State Senator Sarah Elfreth. She arrived in the room while the presentation was ongoing. Thank you for coming. I'm glad we have wounded up your tour of the state here in Anne Arundel County. Thank you, everybody. This concludes the MDOT trip to Anne Arundel County. I just want to remind everybody we will be back in the chambers for our regularly scheduled county council meeting on November 20th at 6 p.m. See you then.
And I was just down there. I literally drove in last night, so I think the extra was strong.
Did not notice that. Yeah. I was typing an email to you while I was happening. Did very productive. Still so much to do, but I think Julie kept me around.
We're getting.
Yeah.
But just.
Neither am I. Neither is he.
Nor is Phil else. Kind of interesting conversation because he's like he doesn't assure it's like has to be politic. Acknowledging that the proposal does make it politic as opposed to a general proposal. Which is basic freedom of principle. And I push back. I don't agree with it. If I'm just going to say, disagree with it.
So why don't you guys go to thank you and secretary and everybody else do that? I'll update Jimmy. Well, more to come. I'd be interested in your take.
It was funny, you missed it. You know, we got to talk, like,